Hi, welcome to the Corbettmaths video solutions to the estimated mean practice questions. In this video, I'm going to go through the video solutions to the practice questions. If you do need some extra help on estimated mean, go to corbettmaths.com/contents and scroll down to video 55 and click on that video, and that will be the video tutorial on the estimated mean, or scan the QR code in the front of this booklet. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so let's have a look at question number 1. So question number 1 says the table below shows the length of 100 fish from a local river. And we've got their lengths, so it's a group frequency table, and the first group says that the length is bigger than 0 centimeters but less than or equal to 10 centimeters, and there's 21 fish that have those lengths. The next group says that the length is bigger than 10 centimeters but less than or equal to 20 centimeters, and there's 11 fish with those lengths. The next group is bigger than 20 centimeters but less than or equal to 30 centimeters, and there's 31 fish with those lengths. The next group is bigger than 30 centimeters but less than or equal to 40 centimeters, and there's 12 fish with those lengths. And finally, the last group, there's 25 fish with a length that is bigger than 40 centimeters but less than or equal to 50 centimeters. And the question asks us to work out an estimate of the mean length for the fish. Now, we're not going to be able to work out the exact mean because we don't know the lengths of these 21 fish. We just know they're in between 0 and 10 centimeters. But what we can do is we can work out an estimate, and we work that out by finding the midpoints. So we pretend each one of these 21 fish have a length of 5 centimeters, the midpoint, and then what we do is we add up 21 fives, and we use that as our estimate. Our next group, well, if it's between 10 and 20 centimeters, we're going to use the midpoint, which is 15 centimeters. The next group's between 20 and 30, so that's 25 would be the midpoint. Between 30 and 40, 35, and finally between 40 and 50, we're going to use a midpoint of 45. So now what we're going to do is to find the mean, we would add up all the values and divide by the number of values. So what we're going to do is we're going to add up all the values. So we know there's 21 fish between 0 and 10. We're going to let them be 5 centimeters each, so we've got 21 lots of 5. So if we were to add up 21 lots of 5, a quick way to that would be to do 21 times 5. Next, we know there's 11 fish between 10 and 20 centimeters. We're going to let them be 15 centimeters each. And a quick way of adding up 11 lots of 15 would be to do 11 times 15, and so on. So we're going to times the midpoints by the frequencies, and that will give us our fx column. So 21 times 5 is, and this is a calculator question, it's a calculator question, so we're going to do 21 times 5, that's 105. We're going to do 11 times 15, that's 165. We're going to do 31 times by 25, and that gives us 775. We're going to do 12 times 35, and 12 times 35 is 420. And finally, we've got 25 times 45, and 25 times 45 is equal to 1,125 centimeters. So we've now completed the fx column. Now remember, to find the mean, we would add up all the values and divide by the number of values. So we've got our estimates here, our fx column for our 21 fish between 0 and 10. We've estimated that they would have a length of 5 centimeters each, and we've done 21 times 5 and 11 times 15 and so on. So if we add up the fx column, that would give us our grand total, our estimate for the grand total. So 105 plus 165 plus 775 plus 420 plus 1,125 gives us a grand total of 2,590 centimeters. So our estimate for the total length of the 100 fish is 2,590. So that's what we get if we added up all the values, 2,590. Then we would divide it by how many numbers there are. Now if we add up the frequency column, that would tell us how many fish there are, but the question was quite nice. It actually told us there was 100 fish. So if we add up these values, you should get 100. And now what we're going to do is we're going to divide the total for fx as 2,590 by 100. And whenever we do that, we will get our estimate for the mean. So 2,590 divided by 100 would be equal to 25.9. So our estimate of the mean length for the fish would be 25.9 centimeters, and that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. So question number 2. And question number 2 says the table shows the height of 50 students. So we've got the heights of 50 students. So we've got 3 students with a height that is bigger than or equal to 110 centimeters, but less than 120 centimeters. 8 students between 120 and 130, and so on. Okay, so part A says write down the modal class interval. So the modal, or the mode, is the value that happens the most, or in this case, it's the class interval that happens the most, or the class interval with the highest frequency. So if we have a look at our frequencies, the highest frequency is 23. So the class interval with the most number of students in it would be this class interval, which is the height is bigger than or equal to 140 centimeters, but less than 150 centimeters. So we would just write that down, that h is bigger than or equal to 140 centimeters, but less than 150, and you would just write down that class interval. Okay, let's have a look at part B. So part B says work out an estimate for the mean height of the students. So we need to work out the estimated mean. So we've got our frequency table and we need to work out the estimated mean. So remember, our first step is to find the midpoints, and then we will find the fx column. And that's found by multiplying the midpoint by the frequency. So let's find our midpoints. So our midpoints are, well, between 110 and 120 will be 115. Between 120 and 130 would be 125. Between 130 and 140 would be 135. The midpoint of 140 and 150 would be 145, and the midpoint of 150 and 160 would be 155. So we've got our midpoints. Now we need to find our fx. And remember, we have got our frequency of 3, and that means that we've got 3 students with a height between 110 and 120. We're going to let their height be 115, and we've got 3 students with a height of 115. So if we multiply 115 by 3, we will find our estimate for the height of those 3 students. And we will do that for all the groups or all the class intervals, and then we will find our fx values. We'll add those up to get our estimate for the total height of all the 50 students, and then divide that by the total frequency. So let's find our fx column by multiplying these values together. So 115 times 3, 125 times 8 is equal to 1000. 135 times 9 is equal to 1215. 145 multiplied by 23 is equal to 3,335, and 155 multiplied by 7 is equal to 1,085. So that is our estimates for the heights of the students in each of the groups. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add up that fx column, and that will give us our estimate for the total height of the students. When we add those up, we get our answer of 6,980. Now that's our estimate for the grand total. Now we need to divide it by how many students there were. And in the question it did say there were 50 students, and if you wanted to you could check by adding up the frequency. So 3 plus 8 is 11, plus 9 is 20, plus 23 is 43, plus 7 is 50. And now we just need to do 6,980 divided by 50, and that'll be our estimate for the mean height of the students. So 6,980 divided by 50. And when we do that, we get that's equal to 139.6 centimeters. And that's our estimate for the mean height of the students. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. Question 3. So question 3 says, James records the time in minutes for 20 students to complete a test. The table or the information about these times are shown in the table below. So we've got this table and we've got the times and we've got the frequencies. And if we have a look at part A, see what we're asked first of all. So part A says to write down the modal class interval. So remember, that's the class interval of the group that happens the most often. So if we have a look at the frequencies, it'll be the group with the highest frequency. So the highest frequency is 11. So this will be the class interval that is the modal class interval. So our modal class interval will be the time is bigger than 4 minutes but less than or equal to 8 minutes. So let's write that down. Okay, so we've done part A. So part B says work out an estimate for the mean time taken. So we need to work out the estimated mean. And what's great, in the question it did say there's 20 students, so we don't need to add up the frequencies. We know there's 20 altogether, but we could add them up and do 4 plus 11 is 15, plus 4 is 19, plus 1 is 20. Okay, so remember, to work out the estimated mean, we need 2 more columns. That's going to be the midpoint and the fx. So our midpoint, well, the 4 students took between 0 and 4 minutes. Well, let's assume they took the midpoint, which is 2 minutes. And our next group was between 4 and 8, so we're going to assume it's 6 minutes. 8 and 12, midpoint 10 minutes, and between 12 and 16 our midpoint will be 14 minutes. Okay, so if we have a look at our first group, there were 4 students that took between 0 and 4 minutes. We're going to assume that each of these 4 students took 2 minutes each. So in total, if we've done 4 times 2, that would be 8 minutes, because if there's 4 students and they took 2 minutes each, that'll be 8 minutes in total, and that's our estimate. Okay, next there was 11 students, and we're going to assume they took 6 minutes each. 11 times 6 is 66 minutes. There were 4 students, we're going to assume they took 10 minutes each, so 4 times 10 is 14 minutes. And our last group, there's 1 student and they took between 12 and 16 minutes. We're going to assume it was 14, so 1 times 14 is equal to 14 minutes. Okay, so we've filled out our fx column. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add up those values to find our estimate for the total time taken by the 20 students. So 8 minutes plus 66 plus 40 plus 14 gives us an answer of 128 minutes. So our estimate for the total time taken is 128 minutes, and there's 20 students in total, so if we divide 128 by 20, that will give us our estimated mean. So 128 divided by 20 is equal to 6.4 minutes. And that's it. So our estimate for the mean time taken is 6.4 minutes. Okay, let's have a look at question number 4. So question number 4 says, Timothy asks 30 people how long it takes him to get to school. And the table shows some information about his results. So we've got the time taken between 0 and 10 minutes, so more than 0 minutes, but less than or equal to 10 minutes. So there's 2 students, so it doesn't take them very long to get to school. There's 8 students that took more than 10 minutes, but less than or equal to 20 minutes. 12 students that took more than 20 minutes, but less than or equal to 30 minutes. 7 students that took more than 30 minutes, but less than or equal to 40 minutes. And 1 student that took more than 40 minutes, but less than or equal to 50 minutes. In this question, we've been asked to work out an estimate for the mean time taken, so we need to work out the estimated mean. So to work out the estimated mean, remember we need our 2 extra columns, our midpoint, x, so x being the midpoint of each of the categories, and we've got our fx. Now if we have a look at our first group, we've got 2 students and they've taken more than 0 minutes, and unless they live in school, that makes sense, and they take less than or equal to 10 minutes. So these 2 students, we're going to assume that it takes them 5 minutes each to the midpoint. These 8 students, because they take between 10 and 20, we're going to assume they take 15 minutes each. These 12 students, we're going to assume that they take 25 minutes each. These 7 students, we're going to assume they take 35 minutes, and the final midpoint would be 45 minutes. Okay, so we've completed our midpoint column. Now we need to find our fx column. So we've got 2 students and we've assumed that this takes them 5 minutes each. So 2 times 5 would be 10 minutes in total. 8 students, we're assuming it takes them 15 minutes each. So 8 times 15 is equal to 120 minutes. We've got 12 students and we're assuming it takes them 25 minutes each, and it would take them in total 300 minutes. 7 students, 7 times 35 is equal to 245 minutes in total for them, is our estimate. And 1 student, we're going to assume 1 times 45, we're going to assume it takes them 45 minutes to get to school. Now remember, to find the mean, we'd add up all the values, so we'd add up all the times. So we're going to add up the fx column, gives us a total of 720 minutes. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to find out how many students were in total. So if we added up 2, 8, 12, 7 and 1, that would give us the number of students, which is 30, or we could read the question and it says 30 students. And then finally, to work out our estimated mean, we're going to take our estimate for the total time taken, 720. We're going to divide that by how many students there were, 30, and we're going to get our answer. So 720 divided by 30 is equal to 24 minutes. And that's it. Okay, let's have a look at question number 5. So question number 5 says, and this is a non-calculator question, the time for 10 students to complete a race is below. So we've got time between 20 and 40 seconds. So 3 students took more than 20 seconds, but less than or equal to 40 seconds. 5 students took more than 40 seconds, but less than or equal to 60 seconds. And 2 students took more than 60 seconds, but less than or equal to 80 seconds. And part A says, work out what fraction of the students took over 1 minute. So if we have a look, there's 10 students altogether, and over 1 minute, well, that is going to be the students that took more than 60 seconds. That's going to be these 2 students. They took longer than 60 seconds. So the fraction of the students that took longer than 1 minute or over 1 minute would be 2/10, or if we simplify it, 1/5. Okay, part B. Part B says write down the modal interval. So remember, the modal interval is the interval with the highest frequency, the one that happens the most, or the one with the most number of students in it in this case. So the highest frequency is 5, so our modal class interval will be the time is bigger than 40 seconds, but less than or equal to 60 seconds. So let's write that down. Okay, and part C. Part C says work out an estimate of the mean time taken, so we need to work out the estimated mean. So if we go back up to our table, we're going to need to add on 2 columns, midpoint. So midpoint and fx. So our midpoint x, let's find our midpoints. So in between 20 and 40, where the midpoint of 20 and 40 is 30 seconds. We've got our between 40 and 60. So the midpoint of 40 and 60 would be 50 seconds. And the midpoint of 60 and 80 would be 70 seconds. Now we need to find our fx column. Remember, that's found by multiplying the frequency by the midpoint. Frequency times midpoint and frequency times midpoint. So 3 times 30 is 90 seconds. So if these 3 students took between 20 and 40, we're going to assume they took 30 seconds each, and there's 3 of them. So 30 times 3 is 90 seconds in total. 5 times 50, that's going to be 250. And 2 times 70 is equal to 140. Now we've got our fx column. Now we need to add up those values to find our estimate for the total time taken to complete the race by the 10 students. Just lining them up. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 0 plus 0 plus 0 is 0. 9 plus 5 is 14, plus 4 is 18, so put the 8 down, carry the 1, and 2 plus 1 plus 1 is 4. So our total fx is 480 seconds. Our frequencies, well, if we add those up, we'll see how many students there were. Now it does say in the question there was 10 students, so if we do 3 plus 5, that's 8, plus 2 is 10 students. Fantastic. Now we just need to do the sum of the fx, 480, divided by the sum of the frequency, 10. So we're going to do 480 divided by 10. So 480 divided by 10 is equal to 48 seconds. So that's the mean time taken for the students to complete the race. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. Okay, let's have a look at question number 6. So question 6 says the table shows information about the ages of footballers in the squad. So we've got their ages. So our first group is that the age Y is going to be bigger than 16 but less than or equal to 20, bigger than 20 but less than or equal to 24, and so on. And we've got their frequencies. And the question says, work out an estimate of the mean age, give your answer to 3 significant figures. So we're going to need to work out our estimate of the mean. Because it says 3 significant figures, it looks like we may need to round it at the end. Okay, let's have a look at our frequency table. Now, it doesn't actually tell us how many footballers there are in this question, so we might actually need to add up the frequencies in this one. Okay, so we're going to start off by working out an estimate of the mean age. So that's going to be adding on our 2 columns, our midpoint and our fx column, which is found by multiplying the frequency by the midpoint. So our midpoints, we've got between 16 and 20. Our midpoint would be 18. Between 20 and 24, so it's going to be 22. Between 24 and 28, that'd be 26. Between 28 and 32, that's going to be 30. And between 32 and 36, that's going to be 34. So we've got our midpoints. Now we need to multiply those by the frequencies to get our fx column. So we've got 6 footballers that are between 16 and 20. We're going to assume that they're 18 years old each, so 6 times 18 will give us a total of their ages and so on. Then we can add up the fx column to get our estimate for the total age of the squad. We can add up our frequencies to see how many footballers there are. Then we can divide and get the estimate for the mean age. So 6 times 18 is equal to 108. 10 times 22 is equal to 220. 11 times 26 is equal to 286. 13 times 30 is equal to 390. And 4 times 34 is equal to 136. So we've got our fx column. Now we're going to add those up to get our estimate for the total age of the squad. So that would be our estimate for what the total would be if we added up all the ages of the squad. So that would be 108 plus 220 plus 286 plus 390 plus 136. And when we do that, we get 1,140. Now we need to divide that by the total frequency. Now we're not told in the question how many players there are in the squad, so we're going to add those up. So we're going to do 6 plus 10 plus 11 plus 13 plus 4. And whenever we add those up, we get there's 44 footballers in this squad. So if we do 1,140 divided by 44, that would tell us the mean age. And whenever we do 1,140 divided by 44, that's equal to 25.909090 and so on. Okay, now we've been asked to round this to 3 significant figures, so that would be in this case where we've got 25 point and then we need one more digit, so it's going to be 25.9. Because this is 0, we're not going to round up, so our answer will be 25.9 years. And that's our mean, that's our estimate of the mean age. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. So question number 7. So question 7 says the speed of vehicles passing through a village were recorded. So here's a table and it tells us the speed of vehicles passing through a village. And part A says work out an estimate for the mean speed. So we're going to add on our columns, our midpoint and our fx. Now we have gone through 6 questions already and I've gone through them in quite sort of detailed explaining why we're doing each step and so on. In this question I'm just going to go through it normally. So we're going to find the midpoints, so between 15 and 20 that's going to be 17.5. If you're not sure of that, you can add the 15 and 20 on your calculator and get 35 and then divide by 2. So you can add 2 numbers together and divide by 2 to find the midpoints if you want to. The midpoint of 20 and 25 would be 22.5. Between 25 and 30 would be 27.5. Between 30 and 35 would be 32.5. And the next one would be 37.5. Don't just assume we're going up in, like in a pattern 17.5, 22.5, 27.5 and just saying, well, it's 7.5, 2.5 and so on, because it could be that this speed might, this category might jump up a bit. So, do make sure that you're looking at each one of the groups and working out the midpoints for each of the numbers. Don't just assume there's a pattern, okay? Okay, let's find our fx. So to find our fx, we multiply the frequency by the midpoint, and that will tell us our fx column. So I'm going to do that now. So I've worked out the fx column, and the numbers are 280, 787.5, 1,870, 357.5, and 75. So now what we're going to do to find the estimate of the mean speed, we're going to add up the fx column, and then we're going to add up the frequency, and then we'll divide the total for the fx by the total frequency. So when we do that, we get For the total for the FX column, 3,370, and the total frequency is 132. Now, to find the estimate of the mean, we're going to do 3,370 divided by 132. And when we do that, we get that's equal to 25.530303 and so on. And let's just round this. I'm going to round this to 2 decimal places, so I'm going to write 25.53 miles per hour. So that's our estimate for the mean speed. And part B, the police give speeding tickets to the driver of any vehicle travelling faster than 35 miles per hour. Work out this percentage of drivers that were given speeding tickets. So altogether there were 132 drivers, and let's find out how many of them were travelling faster than 35 miles per hour. So if we go up to our table, well, in our table we've only got 2 cars that travel more than 35 miles per hour, so it's going to be those 2 drivers. So they give out 2 speeding tickets. So we now just need to work out 2 130 seconds as a percentage. So we'll do 2 divided by 132, which is equal to 0.0151515 and so on. And then whenever we write this as a percentage, we move the digits 2 columns to the left, so that's going to give us 1.515151 and so on percent. And then let's just round this to 3 decimal places, so that'll be 1.515% to 3 decimal places. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. So question number 8. Elena and Michelle own a shop, and the table shows information about the amount of money spent by Elena's last 10 customers. So we've got this table, and it's the amount of money spent by 10 customers. So we've got 7 customers spent more than 0 and less than or equal to £50. 2 customers spent more than £50 but less than or equal to £100. And then finally, we've got 1 customer that spent more than £200 but less than or equal to £250. And our question says, work out an estimate for the mean amount of money spent. So we need to work out an estimate of the mean for this table. Okay, so we're going to add on our 2 columns, midpoint and FX. Okay, so midpoint and FX. Let's find our midpoints. So that's going to be 25, then 75, 125, 175 and 225, and I've found those by just finding the midpoint of each of these categories. So the midpoint of 200 and 250 is 225 and so on. Now we're going to work out the values in our FX column. Remember, to do that we multiply the frequency by the midpoint, so we're going to multiply each of these frequencies by the midpoint. So 7 times 25 is 175, 2 times 75 is 150, 0 times 125 is 0, 0 times 175 is 0, and 1 times 225 will be 225. So that's our FX column. So we're going to add those up to get our estimate for the grand total of money spent by the 10 customers. So let's add up our 175, our 150 and our 225. Remember, this is a non-calculator question. So 5 plus 0 plus 5 is 10. So put down a 0, carry a 1. 7 plus 5 is 12. Plus 2 is 14, plus 1 is 15, so put our 5 down, carry a 1. And 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1, so that's 1 plus 1 is 2, plus 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. So our estimate for the grand total amount of money spent by the 10 customers would be £550, and there's 10 customers in total. So our estimate of the mean would be 550 divided by 10 is equal to £55. So that's our estimate for the mean amount of money spent by the customers. And then it says, Michelle says the mean may not be the best average to use for this information. Do you agree with Michelle? Explain your answer. So let's go up and have a look at the information. So the mean is really good whenever there's no outliers, but whenever we look at this table, we've got 7 customers spent between 0 and £50, 2 spent between 50 and 100. Then we had this customer, this one outlier who spent more than £200 but less than £250. So this customer brings up the whole average. So the mean is affected by outliers. So I do agree with Michelle that the mean may not be the best average to use in this case. So my answer is yes, as the mean is affected by outliers. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. Okay, question number 9. So question number 9 says the table below shows the distance travelled to work by 80 workers. That's great, we know there's 80 of them. And we've got the distance, and this is a calculator question. We've got the distance in miles, and it's between 0 and 5, 5 and 10, 10 and 15, 15 and 20, and 20 and 25. We've got their frequencies. And the question says, part A, work out an estimate of the mean distance travelled. So we need to work out the estimated mean, so midpoint and FX. So midpoints would be between 0 and 5, 2.5, between 5 and 10, 7.5, between 10 and 15, 12.5, 17.5, and finally 22.5 in the midpoints of those groups. And then to find the fx column, remember we can multiply the frequency by the midpoint and they will give you your values for your fx column. So we're going to do 13 times 2.5 and so on. So that will be, whenever we work those out, so we've got our values in the fx column. Now we need to add them up to get our estimate for the total distance travelled by all 80 workers. And whenever you add up the fx column, you get 970. So adding up the 32.5, the 90, the 362.5, the 350, and the 135, when you add up all those values, you get our estimate for the total distance travelled by all the 80 workers to be 970 miles. There's 80 workers in total. It told us that in the question, or you can find that by adding up the frequencies. So we now just need to do 970 divided by 80. And when we do that, we get an answer of 12.125 miles. 12.125 miles. And that's it. So that's our estimate for the mean distance travelled. Okay, and part B says, explain why it's not possible to calculate the exact mean distance travelled using the information from the table. Well, if we look at the table, we had 13 people who travelled between 0 and 5 miles. We don't actually know how far those people travelled. All 5 of them may be a village 4 miles from work, and all those 13 people may live 4 miles from work exactly. They may live much closer. They may live just beside the workplace and, may travel 0.1 mile each, or they may be all spread out, but we don't actually know how far each one of these 13 people travelled, and that applies to all of them. What we're doing is we're using the midpoint of 2.5 miles, 7.5 miles, and so on to help us estimate it. So because it's group data, we don't actually know the values, and we would just write that down. And I've just written the actual values are not known as it is group data, so that's why we can't work it out. Okay, so let's have a look at question 10. So Anthony is raising money for charity, and the table shows information about the donations received. So we've got 90 people who have donated more than £0 but less than or equal to £5, 70 people who have donated more than £5 but less than or equal to £10, and so on. And the question says, Anthony says that the average donation is £10. By calculating the estimate of the mean donation received, decide if you agree with Anthony. So what we're going to do is we're going to work out an estimate of the mean donation received. So let's work out the estimated mean. So we've got this frequency table. We need to add on 2 columns. We need to add on our midpoint and our fx. So let's work out our midpoint. So between 0 and 5 would be 2.5. Between 5 and 10 would be 7.5. Between 10 and 20 is 15. Between 20 and 50, now this one, because it's between 20 and 50, I'm going to add them together, is 70, and divide by 2, 35. And finally, between 50 and 100, well, add them together is 150, divided by 2 is 75. And that's our midpoints. So that's our midpoints, and just be careful whenever you find in the midpoints that you are actually looking at each one of the class intervals and you're not just carrying on a pattern. Okay, and then we've got our fx, so we need to work out our fx, and that's found by multiplying the frequencies by the midpoints. So 90 times 2.5 is equal to 225. 70 times 7.5 is equal to 525. 32 times 15 is equal to 480. 5 times 35 is equal to 175, and 3 times 75 is equal to 225. Now we're going to add those up to get the total for the fx. That'll be our estimate for the total amount of money donated. So we'll do 225 plus 525 plus 480 plus 175 plus 225, and that gives us £1,630. Then we need to add up the frequencies to see how many people donated money. So 90 plus 70 plus 32 plus 5 plus 3. So this tells us the total number of donations, and that is 200 donations. So if we divide our estimate for the total, our 1,630, by the 200 donations, we'll find our mean donation. So 1,630 divided by 200 is equal to £8.15. So that's a bit lower than the £10 that Anthony said that his average donation was. So I don't actually agree with Anthony. I think actually the mean donation, or the average donation, is a bit lower than £10. And let's just write that down. And I've just said that as the mean is £8.15, I do not agree with Anthony. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. Okay, this is our last question, so question number 11, and this time we've been given a table that shows information about the ages of employees for a company. And in this question, it's a bit different this time. We've got this frequency of y, so we've got a missing frequency that we've got to work out, and we've got our ages and we've got the frequencies, and the question says Mr. Sheets calculates the estimated mean from the table to be 34.75 years. So we're given the answer, we're given the estimated mean, and we've got to find this frequency. Okay, so what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to do this question in a similar way to all the other questions that I've done so far. I'm going to add on a column for the midpoints, I'm going to add on a column for fx, I'm going to times the midpoints by the frequencies, we're going to work out the grand total, our sum of the fx, we're going to work out the total frequency, and we're going to divide. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put that equal to 34.75, and we're going to see if we can then solve that equation to find our value for y. Okay, so let's add on our columns for our midpoint. So we've got our midpoint and our fx. So let's work out our midpoints. So between 20 and 30, 25. Between 30 and 35 would be 32.5. Between 35 and 40 would be 37.5. Between 40 and 50 would be 45. And between 50 and 80 would be 65. I'm just going to check that. 50 plus 80 is 130. Divided by 2 is 65. Fantastic. Now what we're going to do is we're going to multiply our midpoints by our frequencies and see what we get. So 25 times y is 25y. 40 times 32.5, so 40 times 32.5 is equal to 1,300. Great. 24 multiplied by 37.5 is equal to 900. 28 times 45 is equal to 1,260. And finally, 10 times 65 would be equal to 650. Okay, so we found our fx column. Now what we're going to do is we're going to find the sum of the fx column, we're going to find the sum of the frequency column, and then we're going to divide them. So let's first of all find our sum of our fx column. So we've got 25y, then we've got 1,300, 900, 1,260, and 650. So let's add this up. So think back to collecting like terms. Add all the y's together and add all the numbers together. So let's add the terms with y's in it to begin with. So we've got our 25y. We've got nothing else with y's in it. So we're going to have 25y to begin with. Now we're going to be adding up then all the numbers, so plus, and then we're going to add up all the numbers and see what we get when we add up all those numbers. So remember, whenever you're doing collecting like terms, you'd add up all the y's and add up all the numbers, and that's what we're doing here. So 1,300 plus 900 plus 1,260 plus 650 would be 4,110. So whenever we add up the fx column, we would get 25y plus 4,110. Now we need to add up the frequency column, and again we're going to add up all the y's, and then we're going to add up all the numbers. So adding up all the y's, that's y. Now we're going to add up all the numbers. We're going to add up 40 plus 24 plus 28 plus 10. And when we do that, we get that's equal to 102. So if we added up all this, we get y plus 102. So we've got the total for the fx column and we've got the total for the frequency. Now what we know is if we divide this by this, we get 34.75 because Mr. Sheed has worked it out. So 25y plus 4,110 divided by y plus 102 is equal to 34.75. Okay, so we're now going to solve this equation. Now, whenever I look at this equation, the first thing that I spot is that we've got this y plus 102 on the denominator. I don't actually want this y plus 102 on this denominator. So what I want to do is I want to get rid of it. And I'm going to get rid of it by multiplying both sides of this equation by y plus 102. Just think about it if I had this equation. If I had x divided by 5 equals 4, if I had this equation, I would probably want to get rid of this divided by 5. So I'd times both sides of this equation by 5. I would times the left-hand side by 5. Well, because I had x divided by 5, and then if I times it by 5, I'd just be left with x. And then on the right-hand side, because we're multiplying both sides by 5, I would then get 20. And my answer would be x equals 20. Likewise for this, let's get rid of that a second. Likewise for this, I want to get rid of this divide by y plus 102, so I'm going to multiply both sides of this equation by y plus 102. Now, whenever I multiply the left-hand side by y plus 102, it just gets rid of the divide by y plus 102 on the denominator, so I'll just be left with the numerator of 25y plus 4,110. So that's the left-hand side. Now I need to multiply the right-hand side by y plus 102. So I'm going to write 34.75. Now because it's y plus 102, that I'm going to write that in a bracket, and I'm going to write y plus 102, because then that means I'm multiplying this 34.75 by y plus 102. So I'm just going to put it in brackets. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand the brackets on the right-hand side of the equation. So the left-hand side will stay the same, 25y plus 4,110 equals, and multiplying out this bracket, so 34.75 times y would be 34.75y, then plus then we're going to do 34.75 times 102. So 102 multiplied by 34.75 gives us 3,544.5. Now we're going to solve this equation. So we've got y's on both sides of the equation, and I like to get rid of the lowest number of y's. So we've got 25y and we've got 34.75y. So I'm going to minus 25y from both sides of the equation. So take away 25y and take away 25y. On the left hand side, when we take away the 25y, we'll just be left with 4,110. And on the right hand side, we had 34.75y. and we take away 25y, will leave us with 9.75y. And then we've still got our plus 3,544.5. Now we've got this equation. Now what I'm going to do is we want to get the y's on their own, so let's get rid of this plus 3,544.5. So let's take that away from both sides of the equation. So take away 3,544.5 from the left hand side, and also take it away from the right hand side of the equation. And when we do that, we get that's equal to, on the left hand side, 565.5, and on the right hand side we'll be left with 9.75y. Okay, and then we just want 1y, so we don't want to multiply by 9.75, so let's divide both sides of the equation by 9.75, and hopefully we'll find y. Now remember that y is a frequency, so hopefully this will be a whole number, an integer. So let's do 565.5 divided by 9. So we're dividing by 9.75 and dividing by 9.75. And whenever we do 565.5 divided by 9.75, we get 58. So we've got 58 is equal to y. So y is equal to 58. And that's it. So that was quite a tricky question. It's quite a hard one. So what we did was, just to recap, we were given this table. We had a missing frequency of y. We were told the estimated mean. So what we done was we worked out the estimated mean and we used the y. So we got the midpoints. We done the midpoints times the frequencies. We added up the fx column. We added up the frequency column. And then we done the sum of the fx column divided by the sum of the frequency column. And we put that equal to the estimated mean we were given in the question. Then we got rid of the y plus 102 on the denominator by multiplying both sides of the equation by y plus 102. Then we expanded our brackets. After we expanded our brackets, we had y's on both sides, so we took away 25y from both sides to leave us with just 9.75y. And then we took away the numbers, and then that left us with 565.5 equals 9.75y. We divided to find what y was, and that was 58, and that's it. So that was a bit of an extension question, that question 11. Questions 1 to 10 were the standard questions in estimated mean. If you can work those out, you're doing phenomenally well. That was just a bit of an extension question. I really hope you found this video useful. This has been the video solutions to the exam questions or the practice questions on the estimated mean. I really hope you found them useful. If you have found them useful, please like the video, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you do need any extra help on the estimated mean, if you scan the QR code or visit video 55 on Corbettmaths, that's a video tutorial on the estimated mean. Thanks so much. Cheers. Bye.